I had secretly gathered all the necessary information about Prince Rui through my observations over the years. His scheme was truly despicable. He deliberately weakened Song with various toxins until she could only lie bedridden, unable to manage household affairs. Then he seized control of all the properties and shops that the Song family had sent as her dowry, claiming he was helping her manage them. But in truth, every coin went toward purchasing official positions for the Shao clan descendants, funding their extravagant lifestyles, and even lavishing gifts upon concubine love. For 8 long years, 8 entire years, Prince Rui had drained the Song family's wealth like a parasitic beast. Meanwhile, poor Song blamed herself for her failing health, lying in her sick consumed with guilt over her supposed physical inadequacy. As Xiao Ziyuan listened to my inner thoughts, his expression grew increasingly dark, his right fist clenching tighter with each revelation. The pieces of the puzzle finally fell into place. Why his mother had fallen ill, why his grandfather's generous gifts always seemed to vanish without trace, why concubine Liu and Xiaofeng lived more lavishly each passing year. He remembered what Bright Moon had once told him. When mother first married into the prince's mansion, she had merely felt slightly unwell. After giving birth to him in her 2nd year, her health began its steady decline. Now he understood. From the moment mother stepped foot in this mansion, she had walked straight into a carefully laid trap, surrounded by predators sharpening their claws. This was all his father's doing, that heartless, calculating man. The rage building in Xiao Ziyuan's chest was almost unbearable. Someday, he vowed silently. Someday he would make him pay. I felt somewhat relieved after venting my frustrations mentally, though anger still simmered beneath the surface. What a thoroughly despicable excuse for a man. But I dared not speak these truths aloud to Xiao Ziyuan. What if he drew his sword and killed his father right then and there? Though in the original story, that was indeed what eventually happened. And what of Song herself? Her health was already fragile. If she learned that years of supposed marital devotion had been nothing but an elaborate deception, could she survive such a shock? What if the revelation proved too much for her heart to bear? Lost in these troubled thoughts, I noticed Xiao Ziyuan's face had taken on an alarming pallor, his handsome features now marked by a frightening intensity. I reached out and gently touched his arm. "What is wrong?" His clear, youthful voice seemed to anchor him, gradually pulling him back from the dark spiral of his thoughts. The violent rage churning within him slowly subsided. He turned to look at my concerned expression, managing the faintest of smiles. "I am fine." His gaze returned to the tranquil lake before us, but his resolve had crystallized. He would save his mother, no matter the cost. At that very moment, in the main courtyard of Prince Rui's mansion, Dr. Feng Aqi's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "The lady's recovery has been truly remarkable. You'll no longer need daily acupuncture treatments. Simply continue with your herbal medicine." Song's face lit up with genuine joy. "Thank you so much, Doctor." Bright Moon immediately bowed in celebration. "Congratulations, my lady. How delighted the prince and young master will be to hear of your improved health." Song exhaled deeply, relief washing over her. Ever since Ziyuan's birth, her health had steadily deteriorated. She had always blamed herself for this weakness, feeling ashamed that as the mansion's mistress, she lacked the strength to manage household affairs and could only lie helplessly in bed. Now that her health was finally improving, surely her father and Yangzhou would find some peace of mind as well. "Please bring tea and refreshments," Song instructed, then turned to Dr. Feng with gentle warmth. "You always leave immediately after your examinations, but today I absolutely insist you stay and share a proper meal with me." Dr. Feng found it difficult to refuse such gracious hospitality. They had barely finished half a pot of tea when Dao Hong entered, lifting the door curtain and presenting an elegant wooden box to Song after performing her proper courtesies. "My lady, the prince has just sent this." Song accepted the box, giving Dao Hong a brief glance. I understand, you may go, after Tao Hong departed. Bright Moon couldn't help but tease her mistress. The prince treats you so well. Sending you powdered fritillary bulb every month to nourish your health. Song blushed, shooting her a reproving look. Don't speak such nonsense, but Dr. Feng had suddenly gone very still, her brow furrowing deeply. What did you say this was? Powdered fritillary bulb. Bright Moon looked puzzled. Yes. Powdered fritillary bulb, the prince said it would be beneficial for my lady's condition, so he went to great lengths to obtain it. Dr. Feng set down her teacup, her expression growing grave. Using powdered fritillary bulb for health maintenance. That is utterly preposterous. Song's expression froze, her heart beginning to race. Is there something wrong with the fritillary bulb powder? Dr. Feng sighed deeply. She generally preferred to avoid the complicated intrigues of noble households. But Princess Five had specifically asked her to treat Song. Even at the risk of causing offense, she felt compelled to reveal the truth. Powdered fritillary bulb comes from the southeastern coast. She began carefully. It is extremely rare and precious. So scarce that only those well-versed in medical texts would even know of its existence. The substance has an intensely cold nature and absolutely must never be given to someone who is weak or ill. The more a person consumes it, the worse their condition becomes. Song's heart lurched, and her face went pale. Her voice began to stutter. Perhaps the prince was deceived. How could her husband, who had married her despite opposition to their union with a merchant's daughter, possibly wish her harm? Dr. Feng looked at Song's stricken expression, with growing sympathy, but felt she must shatter this final illusion. That is impossible. Fritillary bulb powder has very strong properties and exists in extremely limited quantities. Only specialists would have access to it. When purchasing such a substance, any physician would certainly inquire about who would be consuming it and warn against giving it to someone in poor health. She paused. Watching the color drain from Song's face, I had wondered about your previous symptoms. While there were indeed traces of poison in your system, the amount shouldn't have caused such severe, prolonged illness. Now, seeing this fritillary bulb powder, everything becomes clear. You've been ill for so many years, and you've surely seen many different physicians, yet none discovered this. That is because fritillary bulb powder isn't technically a poison. It simply worsens existing conditions, ensuring your illness lingers indefinitely. Song felt her heart hammering against her ribs, her entire body trembling with each painful breath. Dear heaven, could the man she had loved for 8 years truly have been poisoning her with his own hands? Her fingers gripped the table's edge until her knuckles went white. She had to investigate this matter herself, had to know the truth, for her own sake, and for the sake of 8 years of devoted love. Dr. Feng observed Song's deteriorating state with deep concern. Before departing, she pressed a small jade bottle into Bright Moon's hands. If your mistress suffers an attack from overwhelming emotion, give her one of these pills. She had a terrible premonition that tonight would be a sleepless one indeed. That evening, Prince Rui entered Song's chambers wearing his customary gentle, refined smile. Ninger, you sent for me. What is the matter? The endearing nickname struck Song's heart like a dagger. She had always believed she had married well. That she had won the love of the finest man in the world. Suppressing her roiling emotions, Song opened the wooden box on her table, revealing the fritillary bulb powder within. Do you remember this? Her eyes never left his face as she spoke, studying every subtle change in his expression. At the sight of the powder, Prince Rui's face went rigid for just an instant, his heart beginning to race. Why was Song suddenly asking about this? Had she discovered something impossible? The fritillary bulb powder had been his carefully crafted plan. Most physicians had never even seen such a substance, let alone understood its ability to worsen Song's condition. She was probably just making casual conversation, reassured by this reasoning. Prince Rui quickly composed himself, settling beside her with an expression of tender devotion. How could I forget? This is the fritillary bulb powder I specially sought out for you. Song caught that flash of guilt and evasion before his practiced mask slipped back into place. Her breathing became labored. So it was true. The man she had treasured above all else for 8 years had indeed been systematically poisoning her. How many nights had she lain awake hating her weak constitution, believing herself inadequate? Every evening when Prince Rui went to concubine Liu's chambers, Song had felt hurt but never complained, fearing she might pass her illness to her husband. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she bit down hard to keep from crying out. How foolish she had been. Prince Rui noticed her distress and frowned. What is wrong? Song forced down her emotions, speaking with studied casualness. Nothing serious. I just received a letter from father and felt a bit homesick. Prince Rui, convinced of Song's devoted attachment to him, saw nothing amiss. After offering a few perfunctory words of comfort, he departed for concubine Liu's quarters. The moment the door closed, Song collapsed to the floor, finally allowing her tears to fall freely, her heart breaking with the weight of 8 years of betrayal. She could have been healthy all along. She could have participated in every moment of Ziyuan's childhood, instead of lying in bed counting embroidered flowers on silk curtains. 8 precious years, stolen from her by the man she had loved most in this world. The taste of copper filled her mouth as she coughed up blood, consciousness fading just as she glimpsed Ziyuan, and bright moon rushing to her aid. The next day, Song awakened to a young voice calling softly. Mother. She turned to see Xiao Ziyuan kneeling beside her bed, his eyes red, rimmed with worry, his usually pristine face marked with concern. Song gently caressed his cheek, managing a tender smile. Don't worry, Mother is fine. Then, as if remembering something, why aren't you at the study hall today? Xiao Ziyuan clasped her weak hand in his. I asked the tutor for leave. I was too worried about you. Song's eyes filled with tears. For her dear child's sake, she would find the strength to endure anything. With a heavy sigh, she turned to Bright Moon. Where is the prince? She knew that as a mere merchant's daughter, she could never match Prince Rui's power. But that didn't mean she would do nothing. Bright Moon noticed the distinct change in her mistress's tone when mentioning the prince. Gone was any trace of the former affection. The prince was summoned to the royal study by His Majesty this morning. He hasn't yet returned. Song's brow lifted slightly. Why would the emperor summon Prince Rui to the royal study? In the royal study, Prince Rui knelt trembling on the cold floor, his mind racing. This was the first time the emperor had summoned him alone to this sacred space. Yet His Majesty had said nothing since his arrival, simply leaving him to kneel in anxious silence. I sat beside Adrian, swinging my little feet as I observed the groveling Prince Rui below. Such a pathetic display from someone so arrogant in his own home, always favoring his concubines over his wife, showing such blatant favoritism it was nauseating, disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Adrian couldn't help but smile at my internal commentary. How he loved listening to his little daughter's righteous indignation. After thoroughly venting my frustrations, I glanced at Adrian with growing concern. Why hadn't father spoken yet? Had he lost his voice? Adrian, who had been silently laughing just moments before, found himself the target of his daughter's criticism. He cleared his throat and fixed Prince Rui with an imperious stare. "Do you know why I have summoned you here today?" Prince Rui immediately prostrated himself. "This subject does not know. Please enlighten me, Your Majesty." Adrian dispensed with further pleasantries. "I rarely interfere in my subjects' domestic affairs, but this time you have gone far too far. Your shameless favoritism toward concubines while neglecting your wife, allowing a bastard son to beat your legitimate heir, such behavior is absolutely disgraceful." Prince Rui's spine went rigid, then relief flooded through him. So it was about Xiaofeng's misconduct, not the poisoning. He quickly kowtowed again. "My son's unruly behavior stems from my poor guidance. Xiaofeng is my eldest, and I have indeed been too indulgent. I will return home and discipline him strictly. Such incidents will never occur again." "Ha, I'd sooner believe pigs could fly than trust his promises." Xiaofeng had been coddled and protected his entire life while Xiao Ziyuan was scolded for the slightest misstep. Though with father's intervention, Prince Rui might treat Xiao Ziyuan slightly better, and at least Xiaofeng wouldn't dare openly bully his half-brother anymore. Adrian found my assessment quite reasonable. Prince Rui was unlikely to truly change, but Xiao Ziyuan's situation should improve somewhat, which was about the best outcome he could hope for under current circumstances. Just as Adrian was about to speak, my thoughts took another turn. Speaking of favoring concubines over wives, Prince Rui actually maintained decent appearances regarding song. He provided adequately for her needs, after all. He still needed access to the Song family fortune. Oh right, father doesn't know yet. Prince Rui has been spending enormous sums buying official positions for the Xiao clan. Adrian's eyes widened in shock. Buying official positions? The Xiao descendants were truly worthless, leaving Prince Rui no choice but to purchase their advancement with massive bribes to the Ministry of Personnel. Meanwhile, truly talented individuals were denied opportunities while corrupt. Incompetent nobles rose through the ranks. Eventually, this corruption would poison the entire court system. Adrian's jaw clenched tighter with each revelation, his fist gradually tightening as he stared at the kneeling Prince Rui with growing fury. Prince Rui suddenly felt an icy gaze boring into him. Growing colder by the moment, cold sweat beaded on his back as confusion overwhelmed him. Why had the emperor's mood shifted so dramatically? Before he could analyze further, he hastily kowtowed again with utmost sincerity. "This subject acknowledges his faults. In consideration of my recent service inspecting the Eastern territories, I beg your Majesty's forgiveness this once. I swear to cultivate proper conduct and never allow such transgressions again." Adrian's brow twitched at the mention of the Eastern inspection. Prince Rui had indeed worked hard during that mission and handled affairs reasonably well, which gave Adrian pause. But then my internal voice resumed its commentary. How dare he mention that Eastern inspection? Was he there to investigate corruption, or to line his own pockets? As the central government's official inspector, he had accepted every bribe offered while turning a blind eye to countless problems. His reports claimed everything was perfectly fine when numerous cases of corruption and injustice demanded attention. Adrian felt his blood pressure spike, his gaze turning sharp as a blade as it fell upon Prince Rui. He had trusted Prince Rui with that crucial inspection, only to discover the man had been accepting bribes, concealing evidence, and painting a false picture of prosperity. Combined with the earlier revelation about selling official positions, Prince Rui deserved execution 100 times over. No wonder every previous inspection had yielded reports of peace and tranquility. It was all because he had been bought off. Adrian took several deep breaths, his chest tight with rage. That treacherous snake deserved death. Prince Rui grew even more bewildered as the emperor's fury seemed to intensify rather than subside. He had expected the usual understanding for his service's hardships. Before he could speak, the memorial he had submitted was hurled down at him, striking his forehead and leaving an immediate red welt. Panic seized him as he kowtowed frantically. "Please forgive this subject. Please forgive this subject." His entire body shook with terror and confusion. What had gone so horribly wrong? Adrian's voice thundered through the hall with imperial authority. "Prince Rui shows great disrespect. Take him away. 100 strokes of the rod, then 3 days confinement in the ancestral shrine for reflection." Before Prince Rui could comprehend what was happening, palace guards dragged him away as his protests of innocence echoed through the corridors. Soon, his agonized screams filled the air outside the hall. Adrian listened with grim satisfaction, finally able to release some of his pent-up fury. Without concrete evidence, he couldn't execute Prince Rui outright. But today's beating was absolutely necessary for his peace of mind. I was equally pleased with this development. Prince Rui deserved every stroke. Beat him until he could barely sit. It served him right. Adrian felt his anger cooling considerably as he heard my vindictive inner thoughts. Thanks to his precious daughter, he had uncovered yet another corrupt official. This matter was far from over. Once he gathered sufficient evidence of Prince Rui's crimes, he would deal with him properly. After receiving his 100 strokes, Prince Rui was barely conscious but still managed to summon his most trusted servant, whispering urgent instructions before collapsing. That evening at Crystal Palace, Celeste frowned at the thick stack of banknotes before her. "Prince Rui sent these?" Nina bowed as she placed the money on the table. "Yes, Your Grace. He said they were for the princess to buy little trinkets." Celeste stared at the enormous sum. What toys could possibly cost this much? I looked at the banknotes with disgust. How revolting. This scoundrel knew father was angry with him. So now he was trying to buy mother's favor, hoping she would speak well of him to father. Hearing my thoughts, Celeste immediately understood the situation. So that was his game. She had heard that Prince Rui had offended the emperor today, receiving 100 strokes and confinement to the ancestral shrine. Unprecedented punishment indeed. But I wasn't finished with my revelations. And the money isn't even his. It belongs to his wife Song, because Song has been too ill from his poisoning to manage household affairs. Prince Rui has been secretly appropriating her dowry wealth. Prince Rui's incompetence would have been exposed long ago if he couldn't simply throw money at every problem. Whether it was Song's dowry or the monthly allowances from her family, he had spent it all this way, and Song still knew nothing about any of it. Celeste's normally composed features twisted with disgust. What an absolutely reprehensible man, stealing his own wife's dowry money. In this world, women couldn't hold office, join the military, or easily engage in commerce. After marriage, they inevitably faced various challenges, and their dowries often provided their only protection in the depths of noble households. Loving families always provided generous dowries, fearing their daughters might face difficulties with no resources to defend themselves. Yet Prince Rui had poisoned his wife and stolen her dowry. It was truly despicable. I stared at the banknotes with growing anger. "Mother, we cannot accept this money. These funds belong to Xiao Ziyun's mother Song. She has no idea where this money came from. Prince Rui's actions are tantamount to theft." Celeste, having heard my earlier thoughts, showed no surprise at this revelation. She stroked my hair gently. "Mother knows. Even without your explanation, I would never accept these ill-gotten gains." My cheeks puffed with indignation as an idea formed. I had a plan to help Song. I whispered my scheme into Mother's ear, and she smiled approvingly. Meanwhile, at Prince Rui's mansion, Song and Xiao Ziyuan sat together for their evening meal. "Mother, how are you feeling now?" Song looked at him with maternal tenderness, ladling soup into his bowl. "Don't worry, darling. The young doctor visited this afternoon and assured me I am quite well. You needn't be concerned." Xiao Ziyuan accepted the fish soup gratefully. "Thank you, Mother." As he sipped the soup, his mind raced. Mother surely knew by now about Prince Rui's poisoning. She seemed to have recovered somewhat from the initial shock, but should he tell her about the stolen dowry as well? Ancient wisdom suggested that prolonged pain was worse than swift action. Sometimes a festering wound required immediate, decisive treatment to prevent further deterioration. Song noticed his distraction. "What is troubling you, Ziyuan? Do you have something to tell Mother?" After a moment's hesitation, Xiao Ziyuan met her gaze. "Mother, now that your health has improved, have you considered reclaiming control of household management?" Song's eyes flickered at the mention of household authority. During her illness, the dowager had maintained control over the mansion's affairs. As the principal wife and with her health restored, those responsibilities should rightfully return to her. But why was Ziyuan bringing this up now? "Have you heard something specific?" she asked carefully. Xiao Ziyuan nodded. "I've learned that much of the household's daily expenses are currently being covered by your dowry funds." Song's eyes widened in shock. Since Ziyuan had warned her about Tao Hong's poisoning, she had come to trust his insights completely. But how could the household be using her dowry? She knew nothing about this. Her hand clenched involuntarily on the table. Once she regained household control, everything would become clear. The next day at the dowager's hall, concubine Liu dabbed at her swollen eyes with a handkerchief. "Old madam, what are we to do?" she sobbed. "The prince was summoned to the palace yesterday, and still hasn't returned. They say he was beaten 100 times. How terrible!" The dowager fingered her prayer beads with a grave expression just as a servant announced, "Old madam, the princess requests an audience." The dowager frowned. That sickly Song. Was she actually well enough to leave her bed? She had hoped the woman would die this year. Song's illness from the moment she entered the household had been nothing but bad fortune. "Let her enter," the dowager said dismissively. Song appeared wearing an elegant brocade gown, her complexion vibrant and healthy, showing no trace of her previous frailty. Behind her, servants dragged in the bound and gagged Dao Hong. Concubine Liu's eyes widened in terror at the sight. Heaven help them. Dao Hong had been discovered. Would this implicate her as well? The dowager's expression soured. "What is the meaning of this? Must you turn the entire household upside down to be satisfied?" Song performed a proper bow, her smile cold and distant. "Honored mother, I am not creating disturbance. This servant dared to poison my medicine." Bright Moon stepped forward with a packet of white powder. "This is what we found hidden in her room." The dowager's face darkened. "What do you intend to do?" Song's lips curved in a thin smile. "Execute her." The word fell like a blade as Song's gaze swept over the trembling concubine Liu, who quickly averted her eyes. "Isn't that rather extreme?" the dowager protested. Song's eyes blazed with determination. "If we don't punish such betrayal, how can we maintain proper household discipline?" Without waiting for further argument, she signaled her guards, who dragged Dao Hong to the courtyard. Before everyone's horrified eyes, the wooden rods fell again and again, until the servant lay motionless in a spreading pool of crimson. Song's voice rang out coldly as she surveyed the terrified witnesses. This is the fate of those who betray their masters. The household staff trembled at the display of ruthless authority. They had never taken the chronically ill princess seriously before, never imagining she possessed such iron resolve. Concubine Liu went completely white, too frightened to utter a word. The dowager watched with disdainful calculation. Such theatrical cruelty might intimidate these simpletons, but she had witnessed far worse in her years at the mansion. Song bowed again. Honored mother, these past years you have kindly managed household affairs during my illness. Now that my health is restored, I dare not impose such burdens upon you any longer. The dowager snorted coldly. So she wanted control of household management. Impossible. If Song regained that authority, how could she continue diverting Song's dowry to support the Xiao clan descendants? And what of those monthly payments from the Song family? She couldn't bear to lose access to such wealth. Since Song had married into their household, the Song family's resources rightfully belonged to them. Your health has only just improved, the dowager said with feigned concern, fingering her prayer beads. Managing such a large household with its many branches would be overwhelming. Perhaps wait a few more months to fully recover. Song's smile turned icy. Managing the inner household is the proper duty of the principal wife. I couldn't bear to continue troubling mother. When Song refused to back down, the dowager abandoned all pretense. She hurled her prayer beads to the floor, her voice turning shrill and cold. Mind your tone when addressing your mother-in-law. How dare you show such disrespect? Kneel and beg forgiveness immediately. At her signal, two powerful servants moved to force Song to her knees, while another restrained Bright Moon. The dowager's lips curved in a triumphant smirk. No matter how righteous Song's position, a charge of filial impiety could destroy her completely. As a mere merchant's daughter with no power or influence, what right did she have to resist? Song looked up coldly, meeting the dowager's gaze with steely determination. The woman's desperate resistance to returning household authority confirmed Song's worst suspicions about her dowry. Confine this unfilial daughter-in-law to the ancestral shrine for reflection, the dowager commanded. Yes, old madam, the servants replied, moving to carry out the order. Just then, a breathless servant burst into the courtyard, his face pale with panic. The dowager glared at him irritably. Speak up if you have something to say. Old madam, he gasped. Lady Celeste. Lady Celeste has arrived. The dowager nearly fell from her chair. What did you say? Repeat that. Concubine Liu's voice rose to a shriek. Lady Celeste from the palace. Here, now. The servant struggled to catch his breath. Lady Celeste has come from the palace. She brought Princess 5. They just arrived with a full imperial escort. The dowager felt her legs give way, her mind reeling in confusion. Why would the emperor's most favored consort visit them now? Was this about Prince Rui's punishment? But there was no time for analysis. She and concubine Liu rushed toward the entrance to receive their unexpected imperial guests. They hadn't even reached the courtyard gate when they saw an impressive procession approaching. At its head walked a woman in sapphire palace robes, dignified and beautiful, holding the hand of an exquisitely dressed little girl. Behind them followed a handsome young boy. The dowager and concubine Liu were stunned. Wasn't that Xiao Ziyuan? Shouldn't he be at the study hall? How was he accompanying Lady Celeste? They immediately dropped to their knees. We greet Lady Celeste. We greet Princess 5. I looked at the dowager and concubine Liu with obvious displeasure. What a pair of wretched creatures. Today we would deal with them properly. Hearing my thoughts, Celeste showed no warmth toward the two women, her voice cool and distant. You may rise. The dowager and concubine Liu stood on trembling legs. Lady Celeste seemed distinctly displeased with them. I glanced around curiously. Strange. Where was Song? Xiao Ziyuan had said his mother would be at the Dowager's hall today. Xiao Ziyuan's brow furrowed with worry as the same thought occurred to him. I tugged on Mother's hand, speaking in my sweetest voice. Mother. Shall we go inside and look around? I had a feeling Song might be trapped somewhere within the hall. The Dowager and concubine Liu panicked. Song was still pinned down by the servants inside. Before the Dowager could object, Celeste was already leading me toward the inner chambers. The moment we entered the hall, we saw Song being forcibly held down. Xiao Ziyuan cried out and rushed to her side. Mother, the servants, suddenly noticing Celeste's presence, released their grip in terror. Xiao Ziyuan helped his mother to her feet. Mother, are you all right? Song managed a gentle smile despite her ordeal. Mother is fine. My goodness. How could the Dowager treat Song so horribly when she was just recovering from illness? This household truly regarded Song as less than human, while greedily coveting her wealth. Thank heavens we arrived when we did. Who knows what might have happened to Song otherwise? I was so angry I stamped my little foot. Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Celeste's expression turned glacial as she stared at the Dowager. Song is the legitimate princess consort of this household. What transgression could possibly justify having servants restrain her in such a manner? The Dowager responded quickly. Song showed disrespect to her elders. I was simply disciplining her improper behavior. Song immediately performed a proper bow to Celeste. Your Grace. The situation is not as the Dowager claims. During my years of illness, household management remained in the Dowager's hands. Now that my health has returned, I merely wished to spare my elder the continued burden, but she insisted I was being disrespectful and ordered my confinement to the ancestral shrine. Celeste fixed the Dowager with a piercing stare. Is this true? Sweat beaded on the Dowager's forehead. I was only concerned for her health. Concubine Liu attempted to interject. Yes, Your Grace. The princess consort's health has always been delicate. Celeste cut her off sharply. I was speaking to the Dowager. What gives you the right to interrupt? Is this household so lacking in proper protocol? Concubine Liu immediately prostrated herself, trembling. This humble concubine knows her fault. Forgive me. You know nothing. You wretched woman, you've spent years abusing your position as Prince Rui's favorite, terrorizing the household. Any pretty servant girl who caught your eye suffered torture until she died, and you dared not speak against it. Celeste's frown deepened as my thoughts reached her. She gestured to her guards. Take her away. 100 strokes, then confinement to the ancestral shrine for half a month. The guards immediately dragged the now limp concubine Liu away, as her screams soon echoed from the courtyard. The Dowager's legs nearly gave way at this display of swift, merciless justice, requiring her servant's support to remain standing. She understood now. Lady Celeste had come specifically to support Song. Ha, terrified now. Old witch. Let's see if you dare mistreat Song again. Mother is magnificent. I love Mother the most. Celeste smiled slightly at my enthusiastic approval, then addressed the assembled group. Song is the household's principal wife. Her management of domestic affairs is perfectly appropriate. The Dowager immediately bowed low. Your Grace speaks truly. Your Grace is absolutely correct. Song and Xiao Ziyuan exchanged delighted glances. Celeste settled herself in the main seat, observing as the Dowager reluctantly handed over years of account books and household keys to Song. The Dowager's expression showed extreme reluctance, but she dared not resist. After completing the transfer, she bowed again. Your Grace. All account books and management keys have been returned without exception. Celeste nodded curtly. Very good. I walked over to Song and presented her with a jade token, speaking in my sweetest voice. This is Mother's Palace Pass. If you ever wish to enter the palace, simply present this token. No one will bar your way. The dowager's heart clenched at these words. This meant Song could now seek Celeste's protection whenever she pleased. She truly could never mistreat Song again. Song looked at me with gentle warmth, carefully accepting the precious token. Thank you, Princess. You are as beautiful as carved jade and fresh snow. I beamed with happiness at the compliment. Xiao Ziyuan watched quietly, his long lashes lowered in thought. He understood that Celeste's intervention was because of Princess Five. From this day forward, he would protect Princess Five with his very life, after ensuring all matters were properly resolved. Celeste took her leave. Song bowed to the dowager. If Mother has no further business, I shall take my leave as well. The dowager wanted to reassert her authority, but remembering Celeste and Princess Five's power, she swallowed her words. Managing only. Very well. Back at Crystal Palace, I bounced happily alongside Mother, thoroughly pleased with our successful mission. Everything had gone exactly according to our plan. Song had regained her health and reclaimed household authority. After 8 years of illness and humiliation, she had finally triumphed. Celeste smiled at my joy. Last night when I had proposed this intervention, asking her to personally support Song, she had been more than willing. I was her precious daughter, and she would fulfill my every reasonable wish. Moreover, she truly sympathized with Song's plight. That evening at Crystal Palace, as candles flickered and dinner was served, Nina entered with an awkward expression. Celeste glanced up. What is it? Speak freely. Nina lowered her voice. Your Grace, His Majesty is dining at Consort Ru's palace tonight. Celeste's expression remained serenely composed. I see Consort Ru has long held imperial favor. It is natural for His Majesty to visit her. Nina huffed indignantly. I heard Consort Ru composed a new poem and invited His Majesty to critique it. That is why he went there. During this period, the Emperor had dined exclusively at their palace, never visiting others. She felt truly indignant on her mistress's behalf. Celeste set down her porcelain spoon thoughtfully. Consort Ru is Prime Minister Wang's daughter, and was renowned as a talented poetess before entering the palace. Her exceptional literary gifts have always earned His Majesty's special affection. This new composition must be particularly fine. When Nina tried to continue her complaints, Celeste cut her off. This is the imperial harem. His Majesty's choices are not for us to question. Now please check if the fish soup is ready. Princess Five still needs to eat. Nina bowed and departed, leaving Celeste in peace, only for my internal commentary to begin. Hemph. What talented poetess. It is all fake. Celeste's ears perked up immediately. Though I am surprised, Father enjoys such literary pursuits. Does he even understand poetry? And this pork elbow isn't very good tonight. I'll have to tell Mother later. Celeste waited expectantly for more details about the fake talent. But I had already moved on to critiquing our dinner. She sighed in resignation, as long as her daughter was happy. The next day, Eunuch Chen arrived punctually to escort me to the royal study. Adrian's face lit up when he saw me. There is my little star. Daddy missed you yesterday. Did you miss Daddy too? I nodded obediently, while thinking privately that I hadn't given him a single thought. Adrian decided to ignore that particular insight. He settled me beside him, speaking warmly. I heard you and your mother visited Prince Rui's mansion yesterday? I took a large bite of osmanthus cake. Yes, Mother and I went together, and we brought Xiao Ziyuan after his lessons ended. That awful dowager was so cruel. She had servants pin Song to the ground. It was outrageous. I waved my little fists indignantly, then switched to a proud expression. But Mother and I handled it perfectly. Concubine Liu got a thorough beating, and the dowager had to hand over household management. Adrian laughed heartily. Now that is my daughter. A true princess of Great Moon. Very impressive. Next time you need support, Daddy will give you the entire Imperial Guard. My goodness. I was there to lend moral support, not start a war. Why does Father seem a bit simple? Adrian wondered if his daughter was particularly critical of him today, or if he was imagining things. After our chat, Adrian returned to his administrative duties. He had dispatched new investigators to the Eastern Territories and was secretly gathering evidence of Prince Rui's corruption. Once the proof was solid, he could finally eliminate that parasitic traitor from his court. I swung my feet contentedly while enjoying my pastries. Soon it was noon, and Eunuch Chen announced, "Your Majesty, Consort Ru requests your presence for the midday meal." I immediately looked up from my treats. "Father, I want to come too." Adrian was puzzled by my interest but agreed readily. "Very well, prepare the imperial procession." At Cloud Shadow Palace, Consort Ru curtsied gracefully as Adrian approached. "This humble consort greets your Majesty. May your Majesty live 10,000 years." Rise. Consort Ru looked up coquettishly, then noticed the little girl in Adrian's arms with some confusion. This must be the recently favored Princess 5. She seemed rather ordinary. What was so special about her? Concealing her disdain, Consort Ru focused on Adrian with a charming smile. "Your Majesty, I composed a new poem this morning, and humbly request your guidance." Adrian nodded approvingly. But then my thoughts interrupted. Ha! She didn't write that poem at all. What an old manipulator, like aged tea leaves, taking credit for someone else's work. How despicable. Adrian was stunned. The poem wasn't Consort Ru's work. Then whose was it? This seemed impossible. Consort Ru was famous throughout the capital for her literary talents. When they first met, she had improvised verses about pear blossoms, claiming them as her own creation. Could she have been deceiving him from the very beginning? My insights had never been wrong. But this revelation was almost too shocking to believe. Consort Ru, unaware of Adrian's inner turmoil, gazed at him appealingly. "Your Majesty, would you care to see it?" Adrian composed himself, and followed her into the hall with me in tow. Today he would get to the bottom of this mystery. Consort Ru led Adrian to her writing desk, where elegant calligraphy adorned a perfectly prepared sheet. The 5-character verse was beautifully crafted. Adrian read the poem with genuine admiration. It truly was excellent work, but knowing it wasn't actually Consort Ru's composition left a bitter taste. Consort Ru watched the Emperor study her work. With satisfaction, the wretched girl who had actually written it had done well this time. His Majesty seemed quite pleased. Just then, a servant entered carrying a tea tray. "USI, please serve His Majesty the prepared refreshments." Consort Ru was in good spirits, treating USI more kindly than usual. At hearing this name, I perked up immediately. It was her. This servant girl named USI was the real author of all these poems. Adrian glanced at the unremarkable servant. Could she truly be the source of these magnificent verses? USI was the daughter of a tutor in Prime Minister Wang's household, raised alongside Consort Ru during their studies. While USI possessed genuine poetic genius, achieving perfect artistic expression with masterful technique and classical allusions, Consort Ru's attempts could only reach perhaps 70 or 80% of that quality. Soon Consort Ru began resenting Yue Zhai's superior talent, subjecting her to beatings and humiliations, forcing her to kneel on burning hot tea bowls, hoping to destroy her ability to compose poetry. But later Consort Ru realized she could exploit Yue Zhai's gifts for her own benefit. At poetry gatherings, Consort Ru would have Yue Zhai prepare multiple compositions in advance, then recite them as her own work to widespread acclaim. This was how Consort Ru gained her reputation as the capital's premier poetess. Yet her treatment of Yue Zhai only grew worse despite this dependence. Adrian felt both sadness and blazing anger upon learning this. He despised being deceived above all else. For Consort Ru to have fooled him for so many years, while the entire world believed her false reputation, was absolutely unforgivable. With Prime Minister Wang currently managing flood relief in Ning City, Adrian couldn't immediately punish his daughter harshly, but he refused to swallow this insult. Being deceived felt utterly humiliating, taking a deep breath to control his emotions. Adrian addressed Consort Ru casually. "I notice the orchids in your palace are blooming beautifully. Why don't you compose a poem about orchids right now?" Consort Ru's spine went rigid. Why was the emperor suddenly asking her to compose on the spot? Usually they simply discussed her pre-written pieces. While she could write poetry, her work was vastly inferior to Yue Zhai's. The difference was immediately obvious. If exposed, years of careful cultivation would be ruined instantly. Consort Ru quickly adopted a seductive expression. "Your Majesty, I've already written one poem today, and fear my constitution couldn't handle another." Adrian remained unmoved. "Oh, I recall last month you composed 5 poems in a single day." Consort Ru's smile froze. "My inspiration was particularly strong that day. Today I am simply too fatigued." Adrian's voice turned cold. "I see. As long as you are not passing off someone else's work as your own." Consort Ru's face went white, her heart racing as she forgot to respond. "Haha. Even father figured out something was wrong. I take back my earlier comment about him being simple. His mind works quite well indeed." After several moments, Consort Ru managed to stammer. "Your Majesty." Adrian fixed her with an imperial stare, his royal authority pressing down upon her. "Consort Ru, tell me truthfully, did you actually write these poems yourself?" Consort Ru opened her mouth, but Adrian continued. "Think carefully before answering. Remember that deceiving the emperor is a crime punishable by execution of 9 generations." Consort Ru's heart nearly stopped as she collapsed to the floor. Somehow the emperor knew the truth with certainty. Otherwise he wouldn't ask so directly. With no escape possible, she could only confess. Tears streamed down her face as she sobbed. These poems indeed were not written by this humble consort. But I only did this because I love your Majesty so deeply and wish to earn your attention. Please forgive this one transgression. Ha, as if you were using this trick while still in your father's house, earning the title of the capital's greatest poetess, and claiming it was for love of father. Even you don't believe that lie. Adrian, who had momentarily wavered, hardened his heart again thanks to my mental commentary. I walked over to Consort Ru. "Then who did write these poems?" Realizing concealment was impossible, Consort Ru reluctantly admitted, "My servant, Yue Zhai, the girl who just served tea." Yue Zhai immediately knelt and kowtowed. "This humble servant is Yue Zhai." Adrian studied her. "You wrote all these poems?" Yue Zhai glanced nervously at Consort Ru's defeated expression before nodding carefully. "Yes, this servant wrote them." I walked over and helped Yue Zhai stand. "Don't be nervous. Father is very kind. Adrian puffed up with pride at my endorsement. Of course he was. I greatly admire your talent, he told USI. Could you compose a line about orchids now? USI considered briefly, then nodded. This servant can attempt it. She approached the desk and wrote, Orchids bear the pain of separation. Clear blood stains my garments. I sighed upon reading this. USI was writing about herself, forced to hide behind Consort Rue like a shadow, never seeing daylight. Like the orchid, she was filled with resentment and sorrow. Adrian also fell silent after reading the powerful verse that proved USI's genuine talent. He then turned back to the pale, trembling consort. Rue, her crime could be considered serious or minor. With Prime Minister Wang absent handling the floods, excessive punishment wasn't advisable. After brief consideration, Adrian pronounced, Consort Rue, you are confined to quarters for half a month to reflect on your actions. He prepared to leave with me, but I grew anxious. Father couldn't just abandon Yesai. She couldn't remain at Cloud Shadow Palace. Consort Rue would surely beat her to death. Consort Rue had always enjoyed tormenting USI, but the poor girl couldn't resist since her father still served in the Prime Minister's household. She could only continue writing poems for Consort Rue's glory. When the Emperor received submitted poems but didn't visit the palace, Consort Rue would take out her frustrations on Yeshai, leaving her covered in injuries she dared not report. Adrian paused upon hearing my thoughts. This indeed posed a problem. Where could he relocate Yeshai? He rarely employed female servants personally. Perhaps he could send her to Celeste. Actually, Yuezhai's talent was wasted on serving tea. She would make an excellent teacher, but where in the palace could she instruct students? Then inspiration struck. Several days ago, Grand Tutor Su had retired from the study hall, leaving them short, staffed for educating young princes and princesses. With USI's capabilities, she would be perfect for the position, though the study hall had never employed a female instructor before. Back at Crystal Palace, I clapped excitedly upon hearing Adrian's proposal. Let Yuezhai teach at the study hall. What a wonderful idea! Celeste watched my enthusiasm with gentle amusement. Adrian cleared his throat. There is one condition for Yuezhai's appointment. What condition? I asked suspiciously. Despite wanting to help Yuezhai, I sensed a trap. Adrian and Celeste exchanged glances before speaking in unison. You must attend classes at the study hall. What school? I bounced up in dismay. No way. I had suffered enough from work and education in my previous life. How could I face schooling again as a princess? But Adrian remained firm. You are my daughter, a princess of Great Moon. How can you be illiterate? I blinked innocently. But I can read. Father, I know lots of characters. Indeed I could. I'd read plenty of his imperial documents. Adrian wasn't deterred. Can you write? I hesitated. I certainly couldn't handle a brush properly. My calligraphy looked like chicken scratches. Adrian and Celeste shared amused glances at my predicament. How delightful to see their usually confident daughter at a loss for words. Adrian sipped his tea with satisfaction. He and Celeste had planned this strategy carefully. Given my love of play and sleep, convincing me to attend classes voluntarily required considerable scheming. USI's situation provided the perfect opportunity. I pouted. You'll really let USI teach at the study hall? Adrian nodded solemnly. Imperial word is bond. After consideration, I sighed. Fine, I agree. I suppose I'll just have to sleep during lessons and get my deskmate to cover for me when needed. Hearing my immediate plans for academic misconduct, Adrian and Celeste exchanged resigned looks. Still hadn't started school and already planning mischief. Typical behavior indeed. The next morning, Celeste instructed me gently. Behave yourself at the study hall. Understand? I yawned tremendously. Yes, mother. I was too tired to cause trouble anyway, though if someone provoked me, I'd be generous enough to leave them breathing. Celeste's maternal concern only increased upon hearing my mental addendum, but it was too late for regrets. Class time approached. She assigned Nina to accompany me to lessons and remain constantly by my side. I dozed in my sedan chair while Nina explained the study hall's organization. Classes were divided into groups A, B, C, and D by age. Princess 5 and the fourth prince were in Group D. The second princess and third prince attended Group A. The first prince, having reached adulthood, no longer studied there. What about Xiao Ziyuan? I asked drowsily. Xiao Ziyuan is 4 years older than you. So he and Xiao Feng both attend Group C. I drifted off again, awakening only when we reached the study hall. Where is my parrot? Find it immediately. It must be located before classes end today. An arrogant voice echoed from outside, followed by a boy in luxurious silk robes entering the classroom. His features were sharp and rebellious. Felix glanced at me dismissively. So this was the fifth princess father favored so much lately. What was special about this little brat? He glared at me menacingly, trying to frighten me into tears. I simply looked at him with mild interest before returning to my nap. Felix stood there stunned. She was even more arrogant than him. He began jumping around in fury, pointing at me to wake me up. The attending servants managed to calm him down and convince him to sit through the lesson. When the study hall bell chimed, Nina gently roused me from sleep. I opened bleary eyes, propped my chin on my hand, and casually opened my textbook. Group 2's curriculum was quite elementary. Today Master Lin taught from the Analects. Master Lin surveyed his 2 students before clearing his throat. Fourth Prince, please provide the continuation of When Friends Come From Afar. Felix rose lazily and mumbled something unintelligible. What did you say? Master Lin frowned. Having received 9 years of compulsory education in my previous life, I automatically supplied the answer, mentally. How simple. When friends come from afar, is it not a pleasure? Felix immediately corrected himself. The next line is it not a pleasure? Master Lin nodded approvingly. How unexpected that the fourth prince could answer correctly for once. After Felix sat down, he suddenly realized something was wrong. Where had that voice in his ear come from? The tone was so young and clear. He focused suspiciously on me, but I kept my mouth firmly shut while staring blankly at my textbook. It couldn't have been her speaking, Felix snorted dismissively. But then my mental voice resumed, Ah, my fourth brother. The palace's notorious little troublemaker. He is 6 years old and should be attending Group C by age, but his poor academic performance keeps him in Group D. Though next year he'll advance to Group C with Xiao Ziyuan, and then, what a pity. Felix's ears perked up immediately. A pity. What did that mean? Why wouldn't his fifth sister finish her thought? He was practically scratching his head in frustration as I dozed off again, leaving him hanging. After classes ended, Felix hurriedly packed his belongings, only to find I had already vanished. He tossed his supplies at his attendants and chased after me. Soon he spotted my retreating figure and called out, Fifth sister, wait. He had confirmed that the voice belonged to his fifth sister. He desperately wanted to know why his situation was supposedly pitiful. Nina and I stopped and turned back toward him. Nina tensed nervously. This fourth prince was infamous as a little demon. Was he planning to bully the princess? How should she handle this? Felix looked at me, dressed in newly tailored shoe brocade with a fluffy cloak against the cold. my hair done up in 2 little buns tied with red ribbons. I looked like a doll from a New Year painting. Now this beautiful doll was blinking up at him with her sweet voice asking, "Fourth brother, did you need something?" Felix suddenly felt ashamed of his earlier hostility toward such an adorable little girl. Completely forgetting why he had chased after me, he pulled something from his sleeve and offered it to me. "Here, this is for you." That is the story for today. Hope you enjoyed this incredible tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe for more captivating stories like this. And don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you for being here. See you next time.